Bonjour and welcome to the Hawkeye Rising YouTube channel. Thank you for joining me. This will be video number 2 examining world history circa 1534, some events before and after. I'd like to give a special shout out and thank you to Doc for your encouraging comments on video number 1. Definitely an experience, even just getting this one started, an experience. Well, at the end of the day, it's all learning, and learning is a good thing. So, let's begin. Looking at my Gregorian calendar, I've noted that it's almost 2 years to the day since Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau met with Jesuit Pope Francis for a 30-minute meeting at the Vatican in Rome on May 29th, 2017. Now, hold that thought. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, son of late and former Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Elliott Trudeau, was educated at the Jesuit College Jean de Brébeuf in Montreal and also at McGill University in Montreal. McGill University has been in the news recently, though quietly, because of a pending class action lawsuit against the university for its role with CIA funding performing MKUltra mind control and LSD experiments on innocent victims led by Dr. Ewan Cameron in the 1950s. I'll post a link below. Justin Trudeau's gifts to the Jesuit Pope were a rare edition of the Jesuit Relations and a special dictionary. The Jesuit Relations were letters and reports to the Jesuit Superior General sent from missionaries who integrated themselves within indigenous cultures in the 16th century New World under the guise of spreading the good news or the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now it is said of the Jesuit Relations that the legacy of the texts have been eclipsed by the residential school's effort to eradicate indigenous language and culture. At this point, I want to revisit the definition of genocide under the Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide under Article 2, genocide being killing members of a group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of a group, deliberately inflicting on a group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within a group, and forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. I shared that last video, and still the loudest thought in my mind after reading that: payback is a bitch. Luke 17, verse 1. Jesus said to his disciples, "Things that cause people to sin are bound to come, but woe to that person through whom they come. It would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around his neck than for him to cause one of these little ones to sin. So watch yourselves." Now, continuing on from last show and reading from Stephen Leacock's Canada, The Foundation of Its Future, Foundations of Its Future, page 19. With the close of the Norse voyages, all definite connection between mainland North America and Europe came to an end. Now, I wanted to read that because who were the Norse people? And were they the seafaring people of the tribe of Dan, one of the 12 tribes of Israel? Now back to the people groups, the indigenous people groups of the Americas and specifically of North America, and this requires further research, that the name of the Creator, sung about in songs of indigenous peoples and certain tribes, might just be Yah, Yahu, or Yahuwah. Let that sink in, reflect on that. I'll come back to that at some point. Back to reading Leacock's The Foundations of Its Future, Canada, page 20. From this long sleep, the continent was awakened by the tumult of the age of discovery that brought the voyage of Christopher Columbus in 1492. His discovery came, like everything else, because it had to, It was a part of the new awakening of Europe when the night of the Middle Ages gave way to the dawn of the modern world. Many causes contributed. The invention of gunpowder ruined feudalism. There are in warfare two permanent enemies, the attack and the defense. First one and then the other is uppermost. In the Middle Ages, defense had utterly beaten attack. Huge stone castles on hillsides and escarpments with well water and ample provisions could resist indefinitely. Then came the train of artillery and the castles fell. Jumping down. Thus, the close of the Middle Ages saw feudalism give way to great national states with trains of artillery and the cannon of ships of war. That meant a new political order. With it came the awakening mind, the art of printing, the rediscovery of Greek learning, the new mathematics and astronomy, Copernicus and Galileo's telescope. The old heaven and earth literally passed away. Now I want to revisit the Jacques Cartier, French explorer, who was inspired by the stories of Christopher Columbus. We remember the crossover year of 1534 between Pope Clement VII and Pope Paul III. We also remember 1534, the year Cartier on April 20th set sail for the New World. So again, as a recap, Jacques Cartier, born in 1491 in St. Malo, Brittany, married in 1520 to the daughter of Jacques de Grange, moved to Dieppe. We remember, or let's introduce this, Dieppe is the home of Samuel de Champlain. Champlain wouldn't be born until a few years later. 1524 to 1532, Cartier was trained by Giovanni de Verzano and accompanies him in the exploration of what would be the modern east coast of North America. 1532, Bishop of St. Malo introduces Cartier to the King of France, King Francis I, and in 1534 is commissioned by the king to explore further North America. Cartier would cross the Atlantic to explore the New World on three separate voyages, 1534, 1535 and 1536, and the third 1541 to 1542. Cartier is the first explorer of the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the Gulf of St. Lawrence and the St. Lawrence River, and the first explorer to map both. So cartography was a skill of his. Cartography is an interesting skill that Jesuits taught. 1534, July 24th, Cartier erects a 30-foot cross bearing the arms of France and the declaration, Vive le roi de France, live the King of France. Modern-day location of where this cross was erected is O'Hara's Point, Gaspé, also known as the birthplace of Canada. The cross angered the Iroquois chief Donnacona. Cartier took, and some sources say kidnapped, Chief Donnacona's two sons, and took them back to France in 1534 and 1535. Cartier returned Donnacona's sons on his second voyage in 1535 and 36. Cartier returned to France with Donnacona, and consequently Donnacona died of scurvy in France in 1539. Now let's continue The Jesuits, A History from Ignatius to the Present by John W. O'Malley, S.J. Chapter 1, Foundations. On February 2nd, 1528, a devout Basque nobleman, Inigo de Loyola, arrived in Paris. At the advanced age of 37, he intended to pursue a degree at the university. Inigo enrolled in the Collège de Montaigu, where he remained for a year before transferring to Collège Sainte-Barbe. At Sainte-Barbe, he shared lodgings with two much younger students, Pierre Favre and Francisco Xavier. Friendships formed among them and then expanded to include four more students, Diego Lainez, Alfonso Salmeron, Nicolas Bodadilla, and Samuel Rodriguez. At this time, Inigo began to refer to himself as Ignacio or Ignatius, the name by which he has been known ever since. Inspired by Ignatius, these friends in the Lord, as they described themselves, vowed in the summer of 1534 to travel together to the Holy Land to live, at least for a while, where Jesus lived and to work for the good of souls. However, if because of the disturbed political situation in the Mediterranean they could not get passage, they would offer themselves to the Pope for whatever ministries he thought best. On the August 15th, during a mass celebrated by Favre, the only priest among them at the time, they bound themselves to this course of action as well as to a life of poverty. Since they all in fact intended to be ordained, they were already committed to a life of celibate chastity. They did not realize at the time that on that fateful August 15th, 1534, they took the first step that led 6 years later to the founding of the Society of Jesus. Before the seven left Paris to begin their journey, they were joined by three more students, Claude J., Paches Brouet, and Jean Couture. By 1537, the 10, now holding their prestigious Master of Arts degrees from the University of Paris, had arrived in Venice. There they were ordained and awaited passage eastward. As they waited, they engaged in preaching and other ministries in northern and central Italy. When asked who they were, they now responded that they were members of a Brotherhood of Jesus. In Italian, Una Compagnia de Gesù. In Latin, Societas Jesu. As the months passed and turned into years, they realized that political tensions made the trip to the Holy Land impossible. What were they to do? Should they stay together or even take more members into their Compagnia? If so, should they go so far as to try to found a new religious order? In the spring of 1539, they gathered in Rome. Over the course of 3 months, they met almost daily to deliberate about their future. Not only did they quickly decide to stay together and found the new order, but as the weeks unfolded, they were able to sketch the contours of the order in sufficient detail to submit their plan to the Holy See for approval. They called the document their Formula Vivendi, their plan of life. The Holy See, after raising questions, hesitating, then making small modifications, accepted the formula and incorporated it into the Bull of Approval signed by Pope Paul III, Regimini Militantes Ecclesiae. With the Bull's publication on September 27, 1540, the Society of Jesus officially came into existence. On April 19th the next year, the members elected Ignatius their first superior general, and an office he held until his death in 1556. Jumping ahead, page 4, the Society of Jesus takes shape. When the 10 founders drew up the formula, they seemed to envisage the society as an updated version of the so-called mendicant orders, such as the Dominicans and the Franciscans founded in the 13th century. They described themselves as engaging primarily in the same ministries of preaching and hearing confessions. They, like the Dominicans and Franciscans, saw these ministries as almost by definition itinerant and without geographical limits, which thus implicitly entailed overseas missions. They in fact conceived the society as essentially a missionary order. In the formula, the founders made explicit their dedication to missions anywhere in the world by a special vow that obliged them to be ready to travel among the Turks, or to the New World, or to the Lutherans, or to any others, whether infidels or faithful. Because this vow was in addition to the customary 3 of poverty, chastity, and obedience, it is commonly referred to as the 4th vow. Let's look at the dictionary definition of Jesuit. A member of the Society of Jesus, a Roman Catholic order of priests founded by Saint Ignatius Loyola, Saint Francis Xavier, and others in 1534 to do missionary work. The order was zealous in opposing the Reformation. Despite periodic persecution, it has retained an important influence in Catholic thought and education. Now let's look at a portion of the 4th vow, part of the formula the founders made, that explicit their dedication to missions anywhere in the world. I do further declare that I will help, assist, and advise all or any of His Holiness's agents in any place wherever I shall be, in Switzerland, Germany, Holland, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, England, Ireland, or America, or in any other kingdom or territory I shall come to, and do my uttermost to extirpate the heretical Protestants or liberals' doctrines, and to destroy all their pretended powers, regal or otherwise. I do further promise and declare that, notwithstanding I am dispensed with to assume my religion heretical for the propaganda of the Mother Church's interest, to keep secret and private all her agents' counsels from time to time, as they may entrust me, and not to divulge directly or indirectly by word, writing, or circumstance whatever, but to execute all that shall be proposed, given in charge or discovered unto me by you, my ghostly father, or any of this sacred covenant. I do further promise and declare that I will have no opinion of my own will, or any mental reservation whatever, even as a corpse or cadaver, parent ac cadaver, but will unhesitatingly obey each and every command that I may receive from my superiors in the militia of the Pope and of Jesus Christ, that I may go to any part of the world wheresoever I may be sent, to the frozen regions of the north, the burning sands of the desert of Africa, or the jungles of India, to the centers of civilization of Europe, or to the wild haunts of barbarous savages of America, without murmuring or repining, and will be submissive in all things whatsoever communicated to me. As I said in video 1, if you're unfamiliar with this extreme oath, I'll put a link below. Familiarize yourself with it. It must be a lens we examine history with, we examine current events with. It is an essential tool that you must take up. When we examine 1534 events that happened before and after, we must undoubtedly recognize a specific event in history. November 1st, 1517, Martin Luther, 95 Theses, Wittenberg Cathedral, statement, shot heard around the world, and what would begin the dissemination of the Bible to the common person in the common language. No longer under lock and key, but printed, timely, with the assistance of the Gutenberg press, faster than the Inquisition could burn Bibles. The common person now had access to the Word of God, which would inform them their relationship with their Creator, with creation, with the plan of salvation, with Jesus Christ, and with truth. I'll add, John chapter 8, verse 31. To the Jews who had believed in him, Jesus said, "If you hold to my teaching, you are really my disciples. Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." They answered him, "We are Abraham's descendants, and have never been slaves of anyone. How can you say that we shall be set free?" Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth. Everyone who sins is a slave to sin. Now a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs to it forever. So if the Son sets you free, you will be free indeed." For over 500 years, truth has been subverted, suppressed, hidden. Why is it important to know that for the first time in history, we have a Jesuit white pope? And why is it important to know that there is the office of the black pope, or superior general of the Jesuit order? I think that's a good place to leave it for now. Just want to leave a shout out to the Cerrucci team, Johnny, Doc Felipe, George, Eric, Greg. Thank you guys for your support. Until next time, this is Hawkeye. This is for the Cerrucci team. Ciao.